By June 15th, drones were sweeping the trees behind a busy Lexington shopping district, while coordinated ground teams moved through the thick undergrowth below. The strange part was not the scale of the operation. It was the result. So many people searched so intensely, and still came away with nothing. Elena Katherine Moore had been missing since the evening of June 11th. By the time the search expanded on June 15th, the effort involved nearly every major local agency available. The Lexington Police Department was there. So was the Lexington County Sheriff's Department, fire and rescue personnel, emergency medical services, the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, and investigators from the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, known as SLED. Their attention centered on a wooded area along Common Farm Lane, just behind the shopping district where a Lowe's and a Planet Fitness were located. It was the kind of terrain that can look deceptively manageable from above. A drone sees a block of green. A search team on the ground sees tangled branches, uneven soil, hidden drop-offs, and narrow spaces where a person, or a clue, could disappear from view. But officials were careful about how they described the operation. Police Chief Terrence Green told reporters this was not being treated as a recovery mission, at least not at that stage. He described the work as a methodical effort to eliminate one possible search area. That wording mattered. Investigators were not publicly announcing that Elena was in those woods. They were saying the area had to be checked, piece by piece, before it could be ruled out. Search teams worked through the terrain. Drones continued scanning from above. The operation was organized, extensive, and visible to the community. And after hours of searching, it produced no meaningful lead, no confirmed sighting, no piece of clothing, no phone signal. Nothing that explained where Elena had gone after her last known movements. Then, on June 16th, the investigation was hit by a different kind of problem: misinformation. Rumors began spreading through Lexington that Elena had already been found. The claim moved quickly enough that the police department had to issue an official statement denying it. Authorities also apologized for the confusion, because for Elena's family and friends, a false report like that was not harmless gossip. It created hope, and then took it away. But amid the rumors, investigators received a phone call that was different from the rest. A local resident reported seeing a woman believed to be Elena near Lakeside Middle School on Old Cherokee Road. It was only a tip. It was not yet verified. But unlike the online reports, this lead pointed investigators toward a specific place. There was also a timing problem. The caller reportedly placed the sighting sometime between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock p.m. Yet the public timeline placed Elena at the Planet Fitness on Whiteford Way at approximately 6:40 that evening. Investigators did not publicly explain how those times could fit together. It may have reflected an error in the reported time, an uncertainty about the woman's identity, or information that had not been released. At that point, it was simply an unresolved inconsistency. Still, the tip changed the direction of the search. On June 17th, at approximately 1:30 p.m., teams entered another wooded area near 455 Old Cherokee Road, nearly 2 miles from the original search zone along Common Farm Lane. This was not a small adjustment on a map. It moved the operation into a different part of Lexington, following a lead that had come from the community rather than from the first sweep of the woods. Just over an hour later, the search ended. At 2:48 p.m., Chief Terrence Green and Sheriff Jay Kuhn appeared before reporters. The woman found in the wooded area was wearing an olive green zip-up hoodie and black athletic pants. The same clothing described in the missing person bulletin and consistent with the surveillance images released during the search. The clothing gave investigators an immediate point of visual continuity. The person seen walking through Lexington had been described in those same colors. The woman located near Old Cherokee Road appeared to match that description. Soon afterward, the Lexington County Coroner's Office confirmed the identity. The body found in the woods belonged to 39-year-old Elena Katherine Moore. The tip near Old Cherokee Road had accomplished what days of searching had not. It directed teams to Elena. The missing person search was over, but the death investigation had only begun. 3 days after the discovery, Elena's body was sent for a full forensic examination. What the preliminary examination failed to find would make the case even harder to explain. Investigators had recovered Elena's body, but they still could not say what had killed her. From the outside, her body reportedly offered no immediate explanation. On June 20th, Elena was transported to the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston for a full forensic examination. This was the point where the case changed. The search through Lexington's woods was over. Now, the most important search would take place in a laboratory. 2 days later, Lexington County Coroner Margaret Fisher released the preliminary findings. No immediate cause of death had been identified. Just as striking, the examination reportedly found no apparent evidence of several common forms of external traumatic injury. No visible stab wounds, no gunshot injuries, no obvious indication of strangulation or blunt force trauma. Investigators reportedly found no external bruising, scraping, or bleeding beneath the skin that immediately explained Elena's death. That sounds conclusive. It wasn't. An autopsy can sometimes provide an answer almost immediately. A catastrophic injury may be visible. A serious disease may be obvious during the internal examination. But in other cases, the first examination is only the beginning. The absence of an apparent traumatic injury does not prove poisoning. It does not prove an overdose, suicide, natural death, or homicide. It only means the most direct, visible explanations were not immediately there. So what happens next? Toxicology testing looks for alcohol, prescription medication, illegal drugs, and other substances that may have been present in the body. Histology goes smaller, examining tissue under a microscope for disease or damage that might not be visible to the naked eye. Investigators may also compare those findings with medical records, known health conditions, prescriptions, and evidence recovered from the scene. That work can take weeks or longer. And until those results are complete, undetermined is not a final answer. It is an acknowledgement that the answer has not yet been established. There is another distinction that matters here. Cause of death is not the same as manner of death. The cause is the medical reason the body stopped functioning. The manner is the legal and investigative category applied to the death: natural, accidental, suicide, homicide, or undetermined. Authorities could not responsibly settle the second question until they had stronger evidence about the first. After Elena's body was discovered, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division joined the investigation. What had started as a missing person operation had now become something broader, an unexplained death inquiry. Search teams were no longer simply asking where Elena had gone. Investigators had to determine when she died, how she died, and whether another person had played any role. And the timing mattered enormously. Had Elena remained in those woods from the night she disappeared until the afternoon she was found? Or would biological evidence suggest a timeline more complicated than the available surveillance footage appeared to show? Establishing time of death is rarely as simple as television makes it look. Environmental conditions, decomposition, temperature, and the condition of the remains can all affect the estimate. Investigators therefore needed to compare the medical findings with phone data, camera footage, witness accounts, and evidence from the wooded area near Old Cherokee Road. That brought them straight back to the central contradiction. Elena was 39 years old and physically active. She disappeared while moving through a populated part of Lexington. Cameras documented pieces of her route, but not what happened at the end of it. Then she was found dead, and even the preliminary examination did not immediately explain why. There was also something else investigators could not ignore. Friends reported that, shortly before Elena vanished, she had expressed fear for her safety. That detail gave the case a darker edge, but it was not proof that a crime had occurred. Fear can be important context. It can help investigators identify relationships, events, or pressures that deserve closer examination. By itself, though, it cannot establish homicide or identify who, if anyone, was responsible. So the preliminary examination resolved one small part of the mystery. There was no easy, visible explanation waiting on the surface of Elena's body. The evidence that mattered most had shifted deeper, to tissue samples, toxicology results, medical history, and the biological timeline. Before deciding what her final hours might mean, there is another Elena to understand. The energetic trainer seen by clients, and the frightened woman her friends said they saw in private. To clients, Elena was the person who pushed everyone else to become stronger. According to her friends, however, her own world had been narrowing for years. That contrast matters, because the photographs tell only one side of her life. In portraits and gym pictures, Elena looked confident and physically strong. Other images showed her outdoors or spending time with her dog. She was active, social, and rarely seemed to stand still, and she worked constantly. Elena balanced 3 jobs. She was a pharmacy technician at a local CVS, tended bar at several establishments, and worked as a personal trainer at Wolf's Fitness Center. Those jobs brought her into contact with dozens of people from completely different parts of Lexington. At the gym, she was the motivator, the person telling clients to keep going when they wanted to stop. From the outside, Elena looked fiercely independent. She earned her own money, maintained an exhausting schedule, and built relationships across the community. But friends said her independence at work did not reflect what life was like at home. Elena had been with Brannon Slice for approximately 13 years. According to accounts collected from those close to her, they married in 2024. Friends described the relationship not as consistently stable, but as increasingly restrictive. One of their most troubling claims involved the household vehicle. Although Elena worked 3 jobs, friends said Brannon controlled her access to the car. They said he routinely drove her to work and picked her up afterward, leaving her daily movements tied to his schedule. Now, that distinction is important. These were claims made by Elena's friends, not proof that Brannon committed a crime. But they offer context for what Elena reportedly told people long before she disappeared. In fact, one effort to leave the relationship reportedly went back to 2017. Family friend Aston Jeffcoat preserved screenshots of Facebook Messenger conversations in which Elena allegedly discussed ending the relationship. She was looking for a roommate, apparently hoping to rent an apartment and move out. But the move never happened. Lauren Beasley, another close friend, described a cycle that kept repeating. Tension would build. Elena would begin talking about leaving. Then came reconciliation and a period when things appeared to improve. Eventually, according to Lauren, the controlling behavior returned, and Elena once again found herself trying to get out. That account cannot tell us exactly what happened inside the relationship, and it certainly cannot establish what happened to Elena in June. What it does show is that concerns about her home life did not suddenly appear after she went missing. People close to her said they had watched this pattern unfold for years. Then, in May, something changed. Elena had always been highly social. Her jobs depended on constant interaction, and she regularly stayed connected with the people around her. But roughly a month before her disappearance, she went silent on social media. Not quieter, silent. There could be many reasons for someone to withdraw online, and no public evidence establishes precisely why Elena did it. Still, for friends who knew her usual habits, the abrupt change was hard to ignore. On May 31st, that concern became more immediate. Elena met a group of friends for brunch at a local restaurant. Among them was Sandra Campbell, who had known her for more than a decade. Sandra later recalled that Elena could not settle down. She repeatedly got up from the table, checked the entrance, looked through the windows, scanned the room, and watched the people coming through the door. Everyone else was there to eat and talk. Elena seemed to be monitoring the room. Sandra noticed, but she did not confront her in front of the group. A crowded restaurant was hardly the place to ask whether someone believed they were in danger. As they were leaving, Elena pulled Sandra away from the others and gripped her hand. According to Sandra, Elena lowered her voice and said she was afraid for her life. She said the situation was out of control, and that Sandra did not know half of what was really happening. The 2 women agreed to speak again somewhere private, where Elena could explain. That conversation never took place. None of this proved what would happen next. It did, however, establish that Elena's reported fear predated her disappearance. The conduct witnesses would soon describe could not be examined as though it had emerged from nowhere. On June 4th, Sandra missed a call from Elena. That same day, doorbell cameras began recording behavior that strangers could see, but no one could clearly interpret. A homeowner opened his door and found Elena holding a food delivery that did not belong to her. She gave it back without resistance, and then reportedly tried to follow him inside. That was June 4th, 1 week before Elena entered Planet Fitness for the last time. The first incident took place near Wolf's Fitness Center, where Elena worked as a personal trainer. According to the account later given by John Moore, Elena walked onto his porch and picked up a food order that had been left outside. There was no reported confrontation at first. She simply had the delivery in her hands. Then John opened the door. When he saw what was happening, Elena handed the order back. But instead of turning around and leaving, she reportedly tried to follow him into the house. John later described her as disoriented, as if she did not fully understand where she was or what she had just done. That detail matters, not because it explains her behavior. It does not. It only tells us how unusual the moment appeared to someone watching it from the outside. A short time later, another resident reported a similar encounter. Sarah Burleson stepped onto her porch and found a stranger examining packages that had been delivered there. The woman was Elena. Sarah asked the obvious question: what was she doing on the porch? And according to Sarah's account, Elena answered, "Honestly, I have no idea." 3 words, but they leave a lot hanging in the air. There was reportedly no clear attempt to steal the packages. No argument. No explanation that made the situation make sense. Just a woman moving through a familiar community as though the ordinary rules around her had suddenly become difficult to follow. Investigators also said they obtained surveillance footage from outside a Kohl's store. Police Inspector Missy Silcox described that video as showing the same general pattern: an unfocused stare, distant behavior, and movements that appeared disorganized. Before we go further, there is one piece of footage that needs to be handled carefully. A body cam-related clip includes on-scene dialogue about photographing a door and delivering an item. But unless its date, location, and connection to Elena are independently verified, it cannot be treated as proof of what happened to her, or as documentation of any psychiatric transport. It can only provide visual context for the kind of doorstep investigation officers were conducting.
Thank you. Mind if I take a picture of it? Oh, yeah. You can take that one. I just want to take a picture of the door. Thank you. Oh, shit. Just deliver it up?
Yeah.
At 6:40 p.m. on June 11th, Elena entered Planet Fitness without the vehicle normally associated with her. She went to the locker room, took a shower, and left without exercising. Staff at the Whiteford Way location knew Elena. She was a regular, and this was not an unfamiliar building where she might have wandered in by mistake. More importantly, fitness was part of her profession. She trained other people for a living. Yet that evening, according to the publicly reported timeline, she never entered the workout area. That does not prove anything criminal happened. People use gym showers for all kinds of ordinary reasons. Still, in the context of Elena's disappearance, the sequence stands out because it was so specific. Arrive, enter the locker room, shower, leave. No workout. No publicly reported conversation explaining why she was there. Maybe Elena simply needed the facility. Maybe she was trying to clear her head or compose herself after an upsetting day. Maybe there was another practical reason that has never been made public. We do not know. And that is the point. The shower is one of the final confirmed choices Elena made, but investigators have not publicly established what prompted it. Then there is the question of how she reached the gym. Elena's vehicle reportedly was not in the parking lot. Police Chief Terrence Green later said that Brannon had it that evening. If that information is accurate, Elena could not have driven herself to Planet Fitness in the car normally associated with her. So did she walk there? Was she dropped off? If someone drove her, who was it? And where did that person go afterward? Again, those are questions created by the known timeline, not evidence that another person harmed her. But transportation matters here. It could explain where Elena had been before 6:40, whether anyone saw her state of mind, and why she arrived at the gym without an obvious way home. After leaving Planet Fitness, surveillance reportedly showed Elena moving toward the shopping area around Lowe's on Sunset Boulevard. Behind that commercial strip was a thick wooded zone. the same general area that would later become a major focus of the search. And then the cameras lost her. For the next 2 hours and 37 minutes, Elena's movements are not explained by any publicly released footage or confirmed witness account. 157 minutes in a busy part of Lexington, surrounded by stores, roads, parking lots, and passing traffic. Nothing publicly available tells us where she went. Did she remain close to the tree line, somewhere the cameras could not see? Did she cross one or more parking areas? Did she continue walking along the roads? Could she have entered a vehicle for some portion of that time? Each is only a possibility. None has been publicly established. There is no released footage showing someone forcing Elena into a car, and no confirmed witness account explaining what she did during the gap. All we have is the absence itself. And in this case, that absence covers more than 2.5 hours. Think about how much can happen in 157 minutes. A person walking at an ordinary pace can cover several miles. A short drive can take someone far beyond the original search area. Or Elena may have remained nearby the entire time, concealed from view by darkness, buildings, and the woods. The timeline resumes at approximately 9:17 p.m. Surveillance at the Publix near 100 Old Cherokee Road reportedly captured Elena walking alone. She appeared to be wearing the same olive green zip-up hoodie and black athletic pants later listed in the missing person bulletin. No companion was visible in the reported footage. Private investigator Henry Dukes later noted that Elena was moving east, a direction generally consistent with traveling toward her home. That gives the sighting a possible logic. Perhaps she was simply trying to get back. But she still had not arrived. Roughly 1.5 miles separated the Publix area from the location where Elena would eventually be found. Somewhere beyond that camera, her route ended, or changed in a way the available evidence has not yet explained. What the surveillance does establish is limited but important. Elena was alive after leaving Planet Fitness. She had traveled toward Old Cherokee Road, and after a 157-minute blind spot, she appeared once more, walking alone. That image near Publix is the last reported confirmed sighting of Elena Moore. By Friday morning, Elena was missing, but her car was about to appear in the very shopping area where the cameras had lost her. Elena had not driven her car to Planet Fitness, according to the public account. Yet the following morning, Brannon reportedly found that same car at Lowe's, beside the woods where her trail had vanished. That contradiction landed at the worst possible moment. On June 12th, police received the official missing person report. Those first hours mattered. Elena's last confirmed movements were already nearly a day old, and investigators had no reliable sighting after the Publix footage. Every passing hour widened the area she could have reached and reduced the chance of recovering useful surveillance video or a live signal from her phone. Now follow the car carefully. Police reportedly said Brannon had the vehicle on June 11th when Elena arrived at Planet Fitness without it. But the next morning, Brannon went to the Lowe's shopping area and reportedly located Elena's car there. That was the same general area where cameras had recorded her heading toward the woods. So who moved it? When was it left there? And why? Publicly available information does not answer those questions. There may be an innocent logistical explanation that has never been released. But based on the known timeline, the vehicle's movement remains one of the most confusing pieces of the case. Officers processed the car. No publicly disclosed evidence pointed to a struggle inside it. There were no reported signs of physical force and no obvious indication that another person had occupied it. But a clean car can tell you only so much. It does not establish who drove it last. It does not explain how it reached Lowe's, and it certainly does not rule out the possibility that something happened somewhere else. The vehicle created a question. It did not answer one. Investigators then turned to the device that could have mapped Elena's movements with far greater precision, her phone. Police believe she still had it. The problem was that the device was reportedly powered off and no longer transmitting a useful signal. Investigators sought records from the cellular providers, but responses to those legal requests did not arrive quickly enough to guide the earliest search efforts. That does not necessarily mean anyone at a provider deliberately obstructed the investigation. These requests require legal review and technical processing. Still, in a missing person case, the practical effect can be brutal. Search teams may know that location data exists without being able to access it, while it could still lead them to a living person. With the phone silent, the operation expanded outward. Drones scanned the woods. Volunteers searched in the June heat. Private investigators became involved. A cash reward was announced. Then national outlets, including ABC, NBC, Fox News, and News Nation, carried Elena's disappearance beyond Lexington. And as attention grew, people began studying Brannon's online behavior. Late on the night before the official missing person report, he reportedly posted on Facebook that his wife was not okay. The post was later deleted. During the search, he published an apology concerning an unrelated photograph he had shared weeks earlier. Commenters wanted to know why he was discussing that, instead of posting more about Elena or asking the community for help. But online demeanor is not forensic evidence. A person can post strangely during a crisis. A person can also appear perfectly convincing and still hide something. Social media cannot settle either possibility. And away from Facebook, the picture looked different. Private investigator Henry Dukes said that during their direct meetings, Brannon appeared devastated and wanted to help. Law enforcement also stated publicly that he was cooperating. He was not identified as a suspect. Then there was Sandra Campbell's account. She recalled missing an expensive concert with Elena because Elena could not bring herself to be around Brannon. Sandra believed Elena's fear of him was overwhelming. That is a serious statement from someone close to Elena. But it is still a friend's account, not proof that Brannon committed a crime. So two portraits existed at once. To some observers, Brannon's deleted post, his limited search-related activity, and the unexplained car looked suspicious. To people who met him directly, he appeared cooperative, grief-stricken, and eager to assist. The car, the silent phone, and the posts produced questions, but no publicly disclosed evidence sufficient to name a suspect. Investigators still had an unexplained route, a missing device, and competing interpretations of Brannon's behavior. Then the Old Cherokee Road tip brought searchers to Elena's body. But even that discovery could not reveal whether the answer lay in another person's actions, or inside forensic results no one had yet seen. Once the preliminary examination failed to identify an immediate cause of death, two incompatible stories formed around the same evidence. One began with Elena's fear. The other began with everything the cameras did not show, and neither story could be proven. The most consequential part of the investigation had moved away from parking lots, surveillance cameras, and wooded search zones. It was now inside the forensic laboratory. Coroner Margaret Fisher made her position clear. Additional information should wait until the forensic pathologist and laboratory testing could support an official determination. That restraint matters. A preliminary examination can reveal what is obvious, or rule out certain visible injuries, but it cannot always explain why a person died. Toxicology may identify alcohol, prescription medications, illicit substances, or other toxins in the body. But finding a substance is not the same as proving it caused the death. The amount matters. So does the interaction between substances, the person's health, and the circumstances in which they were taken or encountered. Then there is histology, the microscopic examination of tissue. It can reveal disease, internal injury, or biological changes that may not be visible during an external examination. Something can leave no obvious mark on the skin and still appear at the cellular level. Investigators also have to review Elena's medical records. They need to know about any pre-existing conditions, prescriptions, earlier symptoms, and possible natural causes. Without that context, even a laboratory result can be misleading. And there is another question the forensic evidence may help answer. When did Elena die? Estimating the postmortem interval is rarely as simple as naming an exact hour. Investigators consider several biological changes, along with the environment in which the body was found. In this case, the timing could be crucial. Does the evidence suggest Elena entered those woods soon after her last confirmed surveillance appearance? Or does it point to a timeline that does not fit the known footage? That uncertainty has left room for two sharply different interpretations. Sandra Campbell believes the events should be viewed as potentially criminal. For her, Elena's expressed fear cannot be separated from the history of alleged control within the relationship. She points to Elena's limited access to the vehicle, the isolation described by friends, and the warning Elena gave shortly before she disappeared. She was afraid for her life. Taken together, Sandra sees a pattern, not a collection of unrelated details. But former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer has urged caution. Her assessment begins with what the available evidence does not establish. The release surveillance reportedly does not show anyone following Elena as she moved toward the wooded area. And until the forensic testing is complete, Coffindaffer argues that declaring a crime would move beyond the evidence. That does not mean Elena's fear was unimportant. It means fear, relationship conflict, emotional distress, disorientation, and death can all exist in the same story without proving that one caused another. Suspicious circumstances are not the same thing as a medically established cause of death. And a troubling relationship history, by itself, does not identify who, or what, was responsible. So where does that leave the case? In the material currently available, there is no publicly announced criminal charge, no officially named suspect, and no final publicly established explanation for Elena's death. The record supports neither a definitive homicide theory nor a definitive non-criminal explanation. What it does contain is a chain of unanswered questions. How did Elena reach Planet Fitness without her car? What happened during the 157 minutes missing from the surveillance timeline? Who moved the car to the Lowe's parking lot, and when? Why did her phone go silent? At what point did she enter the woods near Old Cherokee Road? And, beneath every other mystery, what medically caused the death of a seemingly healthy 39-year-old woman? Later official findings may answer some of those questions. They may also alter, or completely invalidate, parts of the reconstruction we have now. This is still a developing case, and closing the mystery before the laboratory evidence does would replace one uncertainty with another. For now, Elena's last known journey remains only partially documented: movement toward Old Cherokee Road, followed by an empty stretch of time. 157 minutes. A relocated car. A silent phone. And no final cause of death publicly established in the supplied material. Which missing piece do you believe investigators most urgently need to resolve? And which answer could change the entire case? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for verified, documented updates as they become available.